Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Becky Dennis. I am the current Devon YFC Agri Chairman, and I welcome you all to my first Agri Webinar, Life After Brexit, What's Next for British Agriculture. We are very fortunate to have 4 highly qualified speakers discussing this topic, a very current topic which I'm sure will generate a lot of views tonight. We are also very privileged to have Mr. David Fursdon, Lord Lieutenant of Devon, and our own Devon YFC President chairing tonight's meeting. The structure will involve each panellist introducing themselves for about 4 to 5 minutes, giving their opening remarks, followed by a period of discussion and then questions to the panellists. We would love to welcome any questions, so please do use the chat button feature, which you will find at the bottom of your screen. And either myself or the chair will bring these to the panellists. Without further ado, I'll pass to the chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Becky, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to this event. It's not really going to be a debate in the way that some of our previous sessions have been debates. It's going to be more of a discussion, and we've got a great mix of panelists on with us this evening. So they're all coming from different backgrounds and businesses, and we'll hear a little bit about that in a minute. I hope you enjoy it. Please follow Becky's instructions and put some questions in. It's easier for me if I've got some questions coming from all of you so that we know what you're interested in. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask the panelists just to say a little bit each about Brexit and how Brexit has affected their business. And then I'll start with a few questions and we'll see how that goes from there. So if we start with David Kivell, David is a director of Kivells, the well-known surveyors. He's a chartered surveyor and agricultural valuer, and he was chairman of the Livestock Auctioneers Association in 2019 and 2020 and remains a council member. He's based, running his business from Holsworthy, selling a variety of things, livestock machinery, and carrying out professional work as well, and sales. So it's a delight to have David with us. Nice to have you with us again, David. And if I could ask you to kick off, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. I'm talking to you really as a Remainer, and back in 2016, I was faced with a vote and I voted to remain. And I felt better the devil I knew than the one I didn't. And I knew it took a long time for us to get into Europe. And I thought it would be fairly easy to come out without too much thought. In the remaining 4 years from coming out, I felt there was a lot of opinion, especially around our markets, where some farmers, I think, have realised what they've done and have voted to come out without realising the implications. And there was a lot of concern about tariffs, and certainly leading up to the deal, we as directors of the auctioneering business were, particularly me, was concerned about figures 40–50% tariffs on lamb, the tariff on beef exports, which wasn't so important as lamb, but lamb was looking like it was going to be crippled overnight with the tariff coming in. So that was a major concern, and we were thinking really what we put in place to try and save our lamb auctioning business, which is quite a major part of our business. And for those of you who don't know me, I occasionally sell the lambs, but I principally sell cattle. Very little to do with pork or pigs, don't have anything to do with the dairy, but principally cattle. So, but I could see there was going to be a huge problem with lambs going into 2021. Thank God we had a deal, and the more I look at it, it looks like we had a deal at the cost to the fishermen. So ever since that deal, the lamb price has just skyrocketed. Even today, we've seen hogs making 130, 140 pounds, which if you'd asked me 6 months ago that question, we could have been facing 50 or 60 pounds with the tariffs sitting on it. So life after Brexit, agriculture after Brexit, I think there's a very, very strong future for the young farmer. albeit subsidies are reducing, there is a huge amount of grants that are being introduced, some of them competitive, but on the whole, I don't think they'll replace that December check, which I know a great number of farms in the Southwest rely on to get into profitability or even to break even. So, but I still think there's a fantastic opportunity out there for the young farmer setting up, taking on from dad, taking over the reins. The way the beef trade has gone, and that's not Brexit, that is coronavirus purely. As I see it, the restaurants, the pubs are closed, which is a great misfortune, but I think it proves how much meat or beef was being imported by the catering industry to be used in those pubs and restaurants. Hence, people are staying at home, they're buying from the butcher, they're buying from the supermarket. There's only 2 places they can buy, and they're having to buy British, which has actually resulted in a fantastic beef trade. The lamb trade is slightly different. We're very lucky that a lot of New Zealand imports have been directed into China, so that Brexit has definitely made a difference to that. Our major lamb exports are still, or were still Europe. They still are Europe, and not being faced with the tariff and a weak pound, when the pound is weak, it has the natural effect of pushing lambs up. But we have a huge Muslim influence in the country now, which are swallowing up a good big number of the ewe market and some of the heavy hog markets. So I think as to the effects of Brexit, certainly on the beef and lamb market, yes, there are still problems getting our product across the water with paperwork, the colour of the pen that's used on forms, I understand. I think pork is struggling more than lamb and beef, but it doesn't seem to have had the effect I was expecting. And I'm pleasantly surprised. How long this will last, I don't know. Let's hope it does last. But across every sector, certainly affecting our business, we've never seen the trade and the prices all as high as they are now. Usually there's 1 or 2 sectors up, 1 or 2 down. But in every sector across our business at the moment, the trade is up. And again, you asked how it affects our business. A livestock market is a transparent form of giving you a trade. You've got the opportunity to take it home. Everybody knows that. If the trade's not good, you can take them home. So we haven't had anything going home for at least 6 months. And that trade has just skyrocketed every week, and it continues to do so. So that's where we are as an auctioneering business.
Thank you, David, very much. Gosh, for the days when I was farming to have had something like that. But there we are. You take what you get when you can, don't you? So thank you very much. So now we're going to have a word from Jonathon Hobbs, who is a farm animal vet and a director at North Park Vets. And he works with a mixture of dairy, beef and sheep, with the occasional goat, pig or alpaca. Over the last 12 months, he's got quite involved with agricultural politics, lobbying MPs around the agriculture bill and future trade deals. And so who better really than to speak to us tonight? So Jonathon, over to you, please.
Thank you for having me. So I exactly the same as David. I was strongly for Remain, but we voted out, so we're out, and let's not dwell on that. The key thing, and I completely agree with David, is that we got a deal. Very last minute, it's not a perfect deal, but it is a deal. And when you had George Eustace, the Agriculture Minister, in a run-up to Christmas, saying that British lamb would essentially fall away and go under a bus if we didn't get a deal, that's how serious it was. As a business, we're actually doing very well out of it. Any animal product of any kind has to now have an export certificate go with it, which is done by a veterinary surgeon. So we're currently exporting lots of whey powder to Europe, dog food out of Oakhampton, going to Holland today. It's created an awful lot of work, and actually we're actually too stretched at the minute, and there is a concern that there are insufficient vets able to do that work in the UK, that it's putting pressure on our ability to TB test and just do clinical work. So hopefully things will smooth out, we'll get better at the job. Perhaps some of the draconian paperwork might become a little bit easier to handle. But at the meantime, we're managing. The next thing is once we left, we then came up with the agricultural bill, which went through the Commons throughout the summer, and there was a lot of heated debate about that. There was quite a strong population of MPs and a lot of public support to get British standards of animal welfare and health created as law within that bill, and unfortunately that opportunity was missed. And by missing that, then when we now strike out and create future trade deals, there's a risk that we will be bringing in foreign produce produced to lower standards, which in my mind creates an unfair playing field. So, out in the US and Brazil, for example, they're blanket treating animals with antibiotics, which we're not able to do, which lowers their cost of production. Now, fortunately, there is an independent body which has been set up to advise the government, which has hopefully got a bit of teeth, but we've got to keep an eye on that and make sure that the trade deals that we strike are fair for British farmers, and that if it's not, and we're if the sector is sold down the river, then we're going to have to vote accordingly when we next have a chance to vote. The following on from that, they've then produced the agricultural transition plan, which is their 4 or 5 year plan that David just mentioned there. It's all about decoupling subsidies from land, but there are lots of grants there and there's good opportunity. And there's quite a lot of promising stuff from my point of view about payment on results, perhaps, so showing that you're engaging with reducing disease on your farm. And going forward, though, with the loss of the subsidy, of single farm payment as we know it, the key is going to be understanding your cost of production on farm. It's going to be crucial, and becoming as efficient as possible. And I think we're uniquely placed as vets to help with that.
Great, Jonathan. Thank you very much. A slightly different take on it from David Kivell, but nevertheless really interesting to see how your two businesses have, you've perhaps been slightly surprised by what's happened so far. We're now going to come to David Buckpitt, who is a Director of Accounts in Azets Accountants in Holsworthy, and he joined the firm in 2012, and he's now got 12 years of experience working with a wide range of businesses, including sole traders, partnerships, and companies. And I guess, David, all those businesses will be faring slightly differently, and then there's your own business as well. So I'd be interested to hear your views on the subject, please.
Yes, thank you, David. And just firstly, thank you to Becky Dennis for inviting me this evening to this webinar. So in my role as Director of Accounts, I look after a wide range of clients, a large proportion of those being farming clients or other types of rural businesses. But I also act for a large number of non-farming clients. So I do have a broad client base, and we act for sole traders, partnerships, charities, and limited companies. So again, a wide range of different businesses. Over the past 12 months, I would say our focus as a company has very much been, unfortunately, on COVID-19 and helping our clients through these very, very difficult times, assisting and giving advice on the various different grants and loan schemes and how they could be accessed, and generally just supporting them in any way we can. Then I guess the later part of last year, our attention certainly turned back to Brexit and kind of the realization that a trade deal was still very much in the balance. In the end, the deal was agreed, which we think was really good news, and generally it's been accepted as being a relatively good deal. And again, the fact that there are no tariffs or forms of quotas is certainly a positive for UK businesses and specifically farmers. Most trade deals aren't as open as this, so that's a real positive outcome. Obviously, the UK is now classed as a third country, so outside the EU single market and customs union. And as a result, we've already seen the effects of this at the borders with some delays and hold-ups as we get used to the new rules and regulations that have come in. I wouldn't necessarily say that this has directly impacted our farming clients at this stage. It certainly has some of our non-farming clients who import or export goods, as there's been some significant changes to VAT rules if you trade with the EU. But obviously these added trade frictions that are being created at the moment are kind of likely to impact on the cost of imported goods, for example, and therefore possibly feed and fertilizer prices may be impacted as a result as these added costs are passed down the supply chain. And I echo what Jonathan said earlier, is certainly a key area for farmers moving forward is going to be the phasing out of the basic payment scheme over the next few years. It's going to be really important farmers understand how these are being phased out, the timelines, and looking at ways that they can replace that lost income, via the new environmental land management scheme, and possibly looking at ways of generating new income streams via diversification, but also looking at ways to improve productivity and efficiencies in their existing farming businesses. So I think that's an area that we're going to be assisting certainly our farming clients moving forward. Brexit will open up world markets to the UK, and we've got a great chance to be able to trade with other countries more freely. This will create some great opportunities to access those new markets, but any trade deals, I believe, have to be very carefully constructed, so that we don't compromise our home markets, and our farmers aren't having to compete with sort of cheaper, lowered standard food products from abroad.
Thank you very much. Kevin Roberts now, our last panelist. Kevin's worked in the feed industry for 43 years as a nutritionist, and for the last 15 years he's run his own animal feed company based solely on ruminants. It's called FeedCo, and Kevin heads up the business, and he will have some good views from your own business, Kevin, as to how it's affected you. So if you could possibly go next, thank you.
Yeah, unlike David and Jonathan, I was a Brexiteer. I thought it would, I personally thought that there's opportunities outside Europe, and as a country with 70 million plus population, I think there was great opportunities for younger people and younger farmers to develop and grow. So I don't think personally we've got anything to worry about too much. From our business point of view, my concerns were with raw material tariffs, which hasn't come about, and sterling initially with the weak pound obviously had some impact in terms of raw material costs. The pound strengthened now, and so raw material markets are weakening it slightly. So that's helped. But from a business point of view, up to now, I don't think the animal feed market is actually, our markets hasn't been affected. I think from a dairy point of view, we've got some challenges, but nothing that we can't cope with. I think we've got some of the best dairy farmers in the world, and I think we've just got to keep moving that forward, really. I think our marketing side, working with supermarkets and gaining new products and that sort of thing, will put us in good stead for the future.
Okay, thank you very much. That's positive. So I think all of you are lovely, positive comments. It's great. I mean, we're all used to quite a lot of negativity and on some of the people we talked to, but that was really encouraging. So thank you very much. I wanted to start with a general question, really, and one or two of you have mentioned innovation. People tell us that as an industry we have to continue to innovate. I wondered if you could each just tell me what the most innovative thing you've seen recently on a farm might be. In other words, somebody who you've seen doing something that you think really that is about the future, not the past. That's quite an interesting way of doing it, or something, whether it's the way they've structured themselves, whether it's something they've invented or something they're using, or some aspect of the business. Because when you take away the prop of the BPS, people are going to be more on their own. And so the idea of having, a bit of distinctiveness, a bit of innovation is obviously not going to go amiss. I wondered whether you could just try and answer that for me. And it's probably going to be something in your sector that you know a bit about, but I'd still be quite interested to know what that might be. Anybody feel like they want to kick off with that? Some idea of an innovation.
So I think certainly some of our clients we've seen some really interesting diversifications that they've taken, because I think they see the positive of having a diverse income. So, for example, a couple of clients have installed milk vending machines, selling raw milk to local people, from the farm gate via a vending machine. And actually during COVID, that saw a really strong market, and it's a way of promoting local produce. Other things have been for tourism, so setting up like shepherd's huts or converting some old barns into some furnished holiday lets, because I think people see that moving forward, certainly because of COVID, people are going to be wanting to holiday possibly within the UK and take short breaks. So it's, taking advantage of kind of the Airbnb type getaway. We've seen some of that type of diversification, which has been really positive.
Thank you, David, very much for that. I am one of the people that goes to a milk vending machine in Molehaven at Crediton, and so my answer is, officer, I'm going to get my milk, because I go beyond the 5 miles, and so far we seem to be got away with it, so it's all right. Anyone else? Kevin, if you want to come off mute, then you can just come in and out. I think now, if all of you on the panel come off mute, that would be good, and then you can chip in if you want to about anything. But so who else would like to come in with an innovative thing?
This isn't an individual per se, it's more of an industry level innovation, but genomics is definitely going to be the future, certainly for dairy, and more with sheep and beef, and essentially using what we call sort of big data, using information, things like data from robots, and then understanding where you can improve, be that on production, but also on things like health traits. And obviously the way that the value of like dairy cows is done now is something called profitable lifetime index. 65% of the metrics used are actually health traits. We've moved away from just chasing yields, because yes, you can have a milky cow, but if she's lame and on antibiotics 365 days a year, she's useless. And then with the environmental side of things, it's being driven as well. If you can find animals that are more efficient, so they have they require less feed to produce that kilo of meat, produce less methane. There's work going on to looking at things like adding, Kevin might be better placed in this, but things like adding seaweed into diets to perhaps change the methane levels that are being produced. All these sort of things, and computer-based stuff, is robotics in farming is exploding as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I always, when I hear the seaweed stuff, which people do talk about, I think to myself, someone's got to get actually producing some more seaweed somewhere pretty quickly, because otherwise we're going to have people, environmental issues as people go searching for the seaweed that's there at the moment. So, but I know that is something that people are looking at. So, anything that Kevin or David that occurs to you as being new or different or innovative?
I think the genomic one is an interesting one. I've been fortunate enough to go to the States a few times, and I think over the last sort of probably 10 years, genomics has played a major part and will continue to. like was said by Jonathan, in terms of health and production. And we're obviously trying to produce healthier cows, feeding the rumen. So health is becoming more and more of an issue on farm, and something that the dairy farmers themselves are grasping and taking forward, really. Cow comfort and overall dairy management has been a real focus over the last 10-15 years, and we've got some great dairy farmers out there now that are doing a fantastic job, and I think we'll continue to, and there's going to be some challenges, I think, coming, Jonathan, probably in terms of the types of forage crops. Maize, for example, I think potentially could come under pressure for all sorts of reasons, but I think yeah, it's great working with some great dairy farmers, really.
Thank you very much. David, I don't know if there is anything, but don't worry if there isn't.
I can probably name some things that I've seen on farms, but I know what you're looking at, and I don't think mine are quite so innovative as you're looking for. So I'll probably
that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. So one of the things which I think, if you're looking at trade and you're looking at our exports as well as our home consumption, how can we make our produce distinctive enough and recognizable enough as British to the consumer? And if we can do that, can we do that at a competitive price? Because it seems to me that it's pretty key that actually we go, if we can win the battle, first of all, of our own consumers thinking that British produced stuff is what they want to buy, we've then got a second one to say, can we do it competitively? Maybe the answer is we can't do it competitively, so it has to be better still. But I wondered if you could just comment a little bit on the marketplace for UK stuff, and actually how we sell it post-Brexit around the world to other people. Any views on that? Anyone got?
Shall I kick off? Or
yeah, sure. Yeah.
So we can't compete on price. That's just, it's not happening. So the way we market,
Jonathan, not even with the innovations and the technology and the big data and everything else. You don't think there's any way?
It's economies of scale. We just don't have the animals. We're legally bound, and rightly so, with certain things that we are able or not able to do. So, we have the Animal Welfare Act in this country, which prevents us doing all sorts of different things. Now, in the States, on a federal level, so nationally, there's state rules which have got different things, but on a federal level, the only legislation is regarding transport of animals. That's it. So, for example, if you want to castrate a calf with a rubber ring, you have to do that less than 7 days of age legally in the UK. Crack on anywhere else, do what you like. Things like BST, or bovine somatotropin, which is used to increase milk production, is banned in the UK. Feeding of antibiotics as growth promoters is banned in the UK. So, we could feed a ton of antibiotics to our animals and they will grow quicker, but we don't think that's right. And we shouldn't, because of antibiotic resistance. But, if we then start competing with markets like the US, we just can't compete on price. So our sell has to be health and welfare, and then quality. So if we're starting to, if we want to sell produce to places, rich countries, Japan is the one at the minute that we've got a little deal with. We've got to say that our produce is produced to such a high standard that you want to come and get it. And that standard is essentially grass-fed beef. And then we know all the science behind grass-fed instead of grain-fed, with all your essential amino acids. I forget what they're all called, but we know that the quality is there health-wise, and that's all we can do. if we, the worry was if we get a trade deal with the States and, other countries and agricultural imports are allowed, then they will flood the market and they will then drive price down. I have no problem competing with foreign produce, providing that level playing field is fair, which it isn't.
And of course that has been the big debate, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And promises and so on aren't always kept. So I think one of you mentioned the Trade Commission and whether or not it has teeth. I mean, I think that is one of the questions, isn't it? Will it have enough teeth to enforce this? Any of the rest of you got any comments on persuading the UK customer to take note of British produced produce?
I would just certainly echo that everything that Jonathan said. It's going to be about marketing our product as being a quality product, almost a premium product with very high welfare standards, and creating that unique selling point that customers in the UK and abroad are willing to pay that little bit extra for, knowing where the product has come from. It's at that high standard, and therefore, are willing to pay that slightly extra premium, because as Jonathan said, I just don't think we can compete on cost with some lower sort of standard imports.
Yeah,
quite agree.
You agree, David? Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah, no, he's hit the nail on the head, and AHDB have done a huge amount of work to recover our markets worldwide way before Brexit, and they're continuing. They recognise they've still got a huge amount of work to do. Jonathan mentioned Japan. Japan has just started to take our beef again, but this cloud of BSE is still hanging over Britain, unfortunately, with some of those further countries that won't trade with us. And you mentioned the British consumer, and I think we're pretty well home and dry. Certainly shown in the last 12 months that the British consumer is starting to think long and hard about where their food is coming from. And like I've said earlier, dare I say again, with the pubs and restaurants shut, which is a crying shame. I miss it terribly, don't get me wrong, but that's why beef's gone up in price, because everybody is staying at home and eating better. You take Diageo shares, you think their shares of producing liquor and alcohol would have dropped in the last 12 months. They've actually gone up because they've stayed at home and they've drunk better. And I think the British housewife and the British consumer have eaten better, and they've chosen their cuts, they've chosen their meats. And we haven't had huge imports of beef to sell to the catering establishments. So I don't think we've got such a major concern with our British consumer and getting us across the line. It's getting across to those further countries that we're still not trading with as a hang-up from 1996, which is a long time ago. But AHDB do a huge amount of work towards this, and I think we mustn't lose sight of. We've still got a long way to go, but they probably need a huge amount of financial support to keep waving that flag in front of those importers that need convincing. It's still safe. It's probably safer than any other beef in the world now. And we've crossed some big barriers to get it to that stage. It's all passported. It's double tagged. I was in market this morning, and one of our staff showed me a photo of his uncle. He was loading 960 cattle off his ranch in Australia to go to market. He had 40-odd Arctic parked outside the ranch. It's just, Jonathan's right, it's a totally different scale. So we can't start competing on price, but we can start competing on welfare and everything he's mentioned. So I echo his views.
Thank you very much. Kevin, have you got a...
Yeah, I just think in the dairy sector specifically, we got a massive home market. We produce 70% of our dairy requirements in this country. So we've got a huge, with a population, we've got a marketplace that we've still got to go for, really. I think it's disappointing that we give away our liquid market in terms of price driven by the supermarkets from a cost point of view. But there's a lot of dairies now that are are getting into the flavored coffees and drinks, and adding value. And like David said, obviously, I think since the coronavirus, the housewife is becoming more aware and wanting to buy British products more, which I think somehow or other we need to market them harder.
Yeah.
It's all about selling. So ultimately, I think how we do that, I don't quite know, but I think we've got such a massive market in the dairy sector that actually, there's a big opportunity for us going forward, I think.
And unlocking will be interesting, won't it? I mean, interesting for the milk, out in cafes and so on, and for the meat and in the restaurant pub trade. So, okay, so here's an interesting one. So, what impact is artificial meat going to have on our industry in the future? Anybody got any thoughts on that?
It'll put me out of a job.
And me.
But you're not going to need a vet at 2 a.m. to carve your artificial meat, are you? Or
No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not. But I mean, it does. I mean, it's interesting because it also plays into that business of how distinctive we can be and how good we can make natural meat, because there will be something coming along. There already is stuff coming in that direction, and I'm just thinking, for here we are in a part of the world which is a grass-growing part of the world where livestock's been woven into our industry for years. At the cheaper end of the market, some stuff like this is going to come, in the next, I don't know how many years, and we just need to think how we're going to position ourselves against that. And I just wondered if anybody had any thoughts about that.
I mean, most of this is coming from a sort of, again, an environmental point of view, and then you've got your the vegan movement as well. And I think from an environmental point of view, essentially everyone in the world just needs to eat a little bit less meat and dairy, and that's fact. We can't disagree with that, but it doesn't mean that we all need to go vegan or vegetarian or anything. But basically, if everyone in the world went meat and dairy free for one day a week, then we would be able to feed the world as we currently can. Now, there's a focus obviously on methane and carbon production, and then chopping down the rainforest to grow soya and beef and so on in Brazil and these places. But we need to say that, look, or we need to move back to more pasture fed production, and actually say how good that is for the environment. Permanent pasture is a massive carbon sink. How are we going to grow all these artificial plants as well without feces feeding the soil from animals? That's kind of ignored as well. If we all start eating avocados, well, where do we get the fertilizer from? You've got to mine it somewhere, which has got a massive environmental footprint. I read yesterday that a single almond takes 1 gallon of water to produce. So we've got to, I think, promote how green, especially beef, grass-fed beef and lamb is particularly. We've got to, I think, have stronger advertising. Things like Red Tractor could perhaps promote things a little bit better than they do. Just shout louder and be sensible, but also value what we're eating. Instead of having masses of mincemeat, is just go for smaller, better quality, less of it, be more sustainable, really.
How do you think, though, that will, what have we got, 5.5 billion people in the world at the moment, with a estimate in 2040 of 8.1 billion? How are we going to feed them?
So be more efficient.
Yeah.
Finishing beef cattle at 30 months is a joke.
Yeah, but
you can quite easily finish cattle at 20 months, even British breeds off grass, you can finish at 20 months. We don't want these huge, great carcasses anymore. I mean, David will know more about what the market's looking for, but that sort of thing, we're going to have to become less reliant on subsidies, be more efficient, and actually, if you're then doing that, you can get through sort of 30% more stock in a year than you would normally, and there straight away you're feeding more people.
Yeah, I just think with the estimated population, it'll be quite a challenge on a world perspective to feed these people whatever they eat. I think it'll be an interesting, I shan't be around to see it, but it'll be an interesting challenge, I think.
Don't you think it's all gone a bit, sorry, don't you think it's all gone a bit quiet in the last 12 months?
Yeah. Yes, I do. I think it's a lovely idea to put these cattle on grass and whatever, but someone's going to get very hungry, in my opinion, at some point.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kevin, with the advance of technology, you might be around for another 100 years.
Well, I doubt it.
I mean, there is an argument now. I mean, you'll know, bringing in soya, Kevin, that the impact that is having on the environment. And we can't just ignore that. We can't bury our head in the sand and keep importing soya from, basically chopping down the Amazon, which is, the lungs of the earth, really.
I agree. I totally agree. But we pay credits from, sustainable soya sources. I don't think there's a lot of deforestation in America, for example. And where does that stop? Do we as a business stop using palm products from Malaysia? I think it's and at the moment, obviously you've got soya bean, which a lot of milk companies don't want us to use, fair enough, but soya hulls aren't affected at all, which is crazy when you stop and think about it. So, and really, is a little bloke on the edge of a rainforest that can't grow soya, he's going to grow something else, isn't he? So effectively, I think we live a bit in a situation where it's a little bit, it's.
I mean, we are, regardless of just wider topics, we are at a tipping point. You might not agree with climate change, but we literally are, and things like there's carbon dioxide concentration in the oceans, and if we get a little bit warmer, then that actually affects the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the ocean. You get more CO2 released, and suddenly whatever we do, stop growing soya, stop burning coal, whatever, we're already in a negative spiral we can't get back from. And we've got to be realistic about this, and there are challenges about how we're going to feed the bull, for sure. But we've my worry with things like trade deals in the other parts of the world, and us growing trees, which is what the agriculture transition plan seems to be, is let's all go grow trees. But we're then going to bury our head in the sand and, well, it's all lovely, we've all got trees, we're not feeding soya to our cattle over here anymore, but actually it's just on the other side of the world and we can't see it. There's big problems from that point of view.
Did I read somewhere today that Tesco's or somebody is saying that they're going to try and identify stuff that's produced where the Amazon rainforest has been cut down and then not stock it? I may have seen it on my phone or something, but how you actually identify that, of course, is an issue. But if the big food retailers, I suppose, start to change their tune on some of this, actually we stand to benefit from that, I would have thought, back here. So there might be some things that come our way, perhaps that we're not really expecting. I'm not yet. There's a question from Kate Parr, who is referring to how COVID has encouraged consumers to buy locally, and certainly, I've seen myself a massive increase in people doing just that. How do we continue to persuade people to shop locally after COVID is over and we're out and about? Will people have got into certain habits of supporting, I don't know, farm shops or other outlets? Will they go back just to what they had before, or won't they? Can you see? Maybe you don't disagree. Maybe you disagree with the fact that people have changed their shopping habits. But if they have, do you think that's going to stay, or is that a temporary phenomenon?
I learnt a lot when I watched Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall's program about chickens 4 or 5 years ago, and he followed a housewife buying for 3 children and persuaded her to pay. I think he persuaded her to pay £5 instead of £3 for a chicken. Yeah. And he took her to the farm and he showed her the welfare issues of the chicken and how well reared they were. And for 2 weeks, she bought the more expensive chicken. He ended his visits to her, and he secretly went back and watched her go into the same supermarket 6 weeks later, and she'd gone back to the £3 chicken. Yeah. And he stopped her and he said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Well, we were running out of money." And that, that's what it comes down to. And although I agree people's shopping habits have changed in the last 12 months, will they return to their old habits? I think budgets will force them to, and household budgets vary massively. And that program, I think it was 5 years ago, taught me a great deal that there is still a huge education curve needed for the British shopper. I'm not going to call it the British housewife shopper, because I know there are several men that do the shopping. I've certainly learned how to do it, case of having to. So, yeah, how are we going to keep them buying British, and how are we going to get them away from their old habits? I'm not sure the answer to that question. I don't think it's an easy one, and it's something that our industry representatives, particularly HDB, Red Tractor, all of them together, they must take some benefit out of these last 12 months where, there's only been one place to source food. It's not been pubs, and it's not been restaurants. It's been our own shops, and it's our own butchers and our own supermarkets. So to try and keep that thread running will provide some challenges. And you may say, well, 20% will stick to the new habit, but you could have 80% returning to the old habit, and that's the one that's difficult, where they force the price of food down. And Kevin's right about milk. It's a very valuable product in my view, but it's been made invaluable by lost leadership and supermarket control, dare I say. You're getting beyond my pay grade now, so I must shut up.
Yeah, but I mean, when you do buy the milk from the vending machine, it's not the cheapest milk, yeah. And that we could be in a situation where we are, as an industry, producing for only certain sectors of society, and those may be just the sectors that can afford our food. I don't know, right? And that has implications as well. Anyone else want to come in on?
I just like to pick up on that point. I think from a farmer viewpoint, and I guess Jonathon, everyone will hear this at some time when they go around farms, but I think the farmer themselves feel the Red Tractor. I think we all signed up to it, to the standard, and I think farmers, but I don't know that they actually really feel that they're getting a benefit from it from a marketing point of view. And my view, just probably wrongly in this, but I think everyone's running their business and farmer wise, they're trying to be more efficient generally with like Jonathon said earlier, with better welfare, higher standards required. But who does the market in the other end for them? Who do we actually, as an industry, who sells the product to the supermarket? And I sometimes, from a dairy industry point of view, I think they're very weak sellers. You know, the supermarket seems to control the price, and there's more and more legislation, more and more things coming back onto the farmer with very little going the other way. And there's only so much that the farmer can do. Now, that's been a problem, David, probably for 40 years. But I do think we need to change it, because, you know, there's a lot of dairy farmers exiting the industry.
Huge amount.
And so it is scary for the future, I think, that. I think milk companies have got a lot to answer for in being very weak in the way that they actually sell the products.
Kevin, thank you for that. I want to bring David Buckpitt in because, you know, we've had some technical stuff, which is the others have been talking about. This is technical in a way, but it's slightly different. In terms of looking at your farmers' accounts, how convinced are you that environmental activities are going to be how important do you think they're going to be in the farmers' accounts that you're looking at in the future? And do you expect the income streams from the environment in whatever form to replace the income streams that have been from the guaranteed BPS and also from the marketplace, which is what we've been talking about mainly? So how do you, from an accounting perspective, see environment as a source of income?
So my opinion, will the environmental schemes fully replace the BPS? No, certainly they won't. Some of our farming clients heavily rely on the BPS, and they are the ones that are going to be majorly affected, and possibly they are the ones that are going to have to try and take advantage of these type of environmental schemes as best they can. Some of our dairy farming clients, I would say, don't rely on the BPS as heavily, and therefore their focus is going to be on producing milk in the most efficient way and making sure that they're kind of running in the most efficient manner. So, you know, potentially that they can take advantage of some of the environmental schemes, but maybe in a smaller scale as some other farmers. So yeah, I don't think the environmental schemes is going to fully replace the BPS in any shape or form, and it will vary wildly between farmers of who takes advantage of these environmental schemes and who looks to run their business in the most efficient manner.
And what about commercial opportunities for environmental work? I'm thinking of biodiversity offsetting, setting up habitat banks, fixing carbon for companies that have got no other way of doing it. I mean, if you get into areas like that, for most farmers, that's going to be just something completely new and completely different. How are those farmers going to get their heads around some of these other sources of income that are not the traditional ones that they're used to?
Yes, I think that's interesting, that the locking in of carbon and the potential of sort of tapping into these large companies and having that as an income stream. It's going to be about doing research. It's going to be about talking to the right specialists in these areas and just getting your head around these things and trying to take advantage of these schemes that are out there. So it's going to be about research and speaking to the right specialists, I think.
Yeah. Becky, I see you've appeared on the screen, which is sort of help. Have I done something wrong? But no. Have you got? I haven't seen any other questions in the chat. Have you got any other questions that have come your way that we ought to be?
Yeah, I do, yeah. So Liz Priest has sent in, food is too cheap. I believe shoppers and consumers watch best before dates. Throw away veg, which looks a bit off. How do we persuade shoppers and consumers to stop wasting food, therefore saving them money and allowing us to be able to feed the ever increasing population? And to carry on from that, I've also had question from Linda Bealey about how we can encourage shoppers to buy British when price is often an issue.
Yeah, which is what we sort of dealt with that second one,
Yeah.
but the waste one, you know, my wife and I have a different opinion about the relevance of best before dates, and I just tend to think, you know, I'll know if it needs to be checked out or not. But what do you think about the sort of question about waste? So panelists, anybody want to comment on waste?
I think it's good, actually.
Yeah.
I think from a milk point of view, there's more milk thrown away than there is drunk, nearly. So I'm quite happy with the waste, really. Yeah, I think it's not really much to comment, really.
I
mean, I suppose we could be using it.
Yeah.
Some waste. We could be, you know, anaerobic digesters and whatever.
Well,
any other thoughts about waste?
I think the key probably starts with educating children at school, probably, and how to cook, how to shop, how to, you know, life skills better, really. That's, you know, I went to university and had to learn how to cook for myself, and what I used to do was, you know, cook a meal for 4 or 6 people and put it in the freezer, and then now when I'm on call, I still do it, and I can whip out a nice decent meal out the freezer ready to go. But it is criminal how much food is wasted, and then you think about how we've got a real problem with poverty in the UK and people on the breadline. You know, the average person in the UK is 1.5 paychecks away from losing everything. That's the reality of where we are, and just buying food and just tossing it in the bin just seems ludicrous. And you've got people living on the streets that, you know, arguably some of them have got themselves in that situation by their life choices, but it's shocking. And especially when you're buying in something like a punnet of blueberries, which is coming from Spain, which has been grown in a greenhouse covered in plastic, and that plastic just gets binned and thrown in the ocean, and then it's put on a boat or driven all the way up through France and on a ferry, and all that carbon output, and then it just ends up in your bin.
It's 2 for 1 offers, isn't it?
It's criminal.
Yeah, it's some of the offers that the supermarkets, you know, 2 for 1 and all the rest of it until you buy a bit more than you need. And anybody else got a comment on waste? I mean, you know, it would, Kevin, your question about feeding the world, you know, actually some of it could be done by not chucking away so much, I guess.
I smile a bit because I've got 3 daughters. We were brought up on a farm, and not one of my daughters could draw a chicken.
Really?
But my wife could.
Yeah.
And so I think the eating habits of the young have changed, obviously. And we, you know, with the wives working, we've become more of a throwaway society, to be honest. Are we ever going to change that? I don't think so.
What I will say is one of the things that has really impressed me in COVID is the food banks and what's gone on in the food banks. I mean, I think there's been some outstanding stuff done, you know, in this county by people, volunteers, and others, you know, but you know, that's been a COVID initiative. What will happen with that afterwards, I don't know, but certainly thinking a bit about it. Moving on, I think I'm going to hand back to you now to close things up. Just before I do, I just wanted to thank you all on the panel for your contributions. It's been great working with you tonight. I'm going to hand over to Becky.
Thank you, David. Firstly, a huge thank you to you, David, for chairing tonight's meeting, and also to our 4 panellists, David Kivell, David Buckpitt, Kevin Roberts, and Jonathon Hobbs. I hope you've all enjoyed tonight and have taken away some practical advice and positive messages that British agriculture has a bright future ahead, especially for the young generation as us young farmers. Please look out for future events I've got planned in the near future. But for now, that's it from me. So I wish you all a good evening, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
And that's it, I think. I think we're all taken offline now.